After 2 years of losing, I finally became profitable. Not because I found the perfect strategy or changed my mindset, but because I figured out what truly matters. Because profitability isn't the cause, it's the result. It's not the input, it's the output. And the input is consistency. So in this video, I will share the 10 simple things I changed to finally become consistent, which made profitability the natural outcome. And honestly, if somebody will just told me this back then instead of the same generic trading guru advice, I would have saved 2 years, thousands of dollars, and more self-doubt than I would like to admit. So the first shift happened when I stopped trying to optimize everything and started removing what wasn't essential. Because I didn't need more context, I needed less noise. And the moment I looked into one time frame, I finally start seeing clearly. You probably lived this exact pattern. You analyze on a 4 hour, drop to the 1 hour for zones, zoom into the 15 minute for structure, scan the 5 minute for entry precision, then double check everything on the daily just in case. And now you talked yourself out of a perfectly good trade because the 4 hour looked bullish, but the 15 minute showed weakness and the 5 minute candle didn't feel clean enough. And by the time you figured it out, the move already happened. You didn't miss because you lacked skill. You missed because your brain was overloaded. Too many charts, too many options, too many chances to doubt yourself. And let's be real. Switching time frames isn't about precision, it's about protection. You don't want to be wrong, so you keep checking. But that checking, it's not analysis, it's hesitation. It's fear masked as preparation. And that fear creates the illusion that the market hasn't aligned yet, when really you haven't aligned with the market. Because as long as you are juggling 5 charts to make one decision, you are not trading with confidence. You are trading with doubt. I went through this for years. I thought I was being smart, careful, disciplined, but I was just exhausting myself. Until one day, I did something radical. I erased all zones, closed all tabs, and forced myself to trade one model on one time frame with one set of rules. That single decision changed everything. My chart time dropped, my clarity exploded, and my results finally stopped swinging up and down. I wasn't any smarter, I was just finally focused. Here's what you need to understand. Your brain wasn't built for multi-chart analysis under live pressure. Every other time frame equals one more source of conflict, which equals one more trigger for overthinking, which equals one more reason to hesitate. Execution isn't about perfect confirmation. It's about clean decisions. And clean decisions only happen when the input is limited and fixed. Clarity doesn't come from stacking information. It comes from removing everything unnecessary. The fewer inputs you allow, the more conviction you gain. So if you are still jumping time frames, hoping for more confirmations, ask yourself honestly, has it made you faster, clearer, more profitable, or just more confused? Because what helped me finally get consistent wasn't more precision, it was less permission. One model, one time frame, one decision. That's when trading became simple, repeatable, executable, and for the first time it finally felt winnable. But here's the thing, even if you look into one time frame, you will still hesitate, you will still doubt, and you will still overthink if your system is overcomplicated. I'm sure this will sound familiar. You take a decent setup, but you are unsure, so you add a filter. Still not sure, so you wait for extra confirmation. You add RSI, a zone, a moving average. Then you change the pair, change the session, tweak the stop, and before you know it, you created a system so precise, it only works on hindsight. You keep thinking, if I just make one more change, it will finally click. But it doesn't. Because you are not actually trying to clarify the system. You are trying to protect yourself from uncertainty. And that fear, it's what keeps you stuck. Let's call it what it is. You don't want a better setup. You want a guarantee. You want your next trade to feel safe. So you keep adding conditions not because it helps, but because you don't trust yourself. You want a system that removes all doubt, one that proves you are ready, that you finally mastered it. But the more filters you add, the more power you give to your fear. And eventually, you are not even trading anymore. You are just sitting there waiting for perfection. That was me for months. Endless tweaks, new filters, more confirmations. And I convinced myself I was refining. But my results got worse. Until one day I deleted everything. No indicators, no double zones, no overlapping criteria. Just one clean setup, one trigger, one decision. And instantly I could breathe again. I stopped debating, stopped hesitating, stopped second guessing every entry. I wasn't trying to be perfect anymore. I was just trading the edge. Because here is the truth. The more complex your system, the more fragile it becomes. You don't need more filters. You need more reliability. And reliability comes from clarity under pressure. A simple system survives when you are tired, when your emotions spike, when the market moves fast, when your confidence is low. Why? Because it removes bandwidth strain. It protects execution and it lets you operate even when your mind doesn't want to. It's not dumbed down, it's bulletproof. So if you reach that point when you strip your system down to just what matters, that's not a tactic, it's a transformation. Because now you're not looking for magic. You are not obsessed with being right. You are not adjusting based on how you feel. You are locked in. You are clean, and most importantly, you are consistent. That's what simplicity unlocks: clarity, trust, and speed. But there is a hidden enemy of simplicity, one that doesn't live on your chart. It lives in your YouTube feed. Because even if your system is clear, your mind won't be if you keep watching every new strategy video just to feel like you are learning something new. I'm sure this happened to you. Your system is working well enough. You are trading decently. You even feel close to consistency, but somehow you still keep searching. A new video appears, a new tactic, a cleaner setup, a different filter. It looks promising, simple, more advanced, so you click. And 1 hour later, your mind is tangled in dozens of maybes. Maybe I should wait for a bigger week, maybe my entries are too aggressive, maybe that confirmation is what I've been missing, and now you are back at square one. You didn't get smarter, you just got more confused. Because you weren't consuming to learn, you were consuming to escape doing. Let's be brutally honest. You already know what needs to be done. You are just afraid of doing it alone. So you chase voices, you chase validation, you chase the feeling of maybe there is something better. But there is a cost to that. Because if you are always watching, you are never fully trusting. You are never committing, you are never owning the system you chose. And that tells your brain something dangerous. I'm not the authority, someone else always knows better. Which means even if your system is perfect, you will still doubt it because your confidence isn't internal, it's outsourced. And until you cut that cord, you will always need another video, another guru, another breakdown just to feel safe. This was me for months. I had a system that made sense, backtested, clean, logical, but every week I tweaked because someone said something slightly different. But I wasn't evolving, I was falling apart. So I made one hard decision. No more trading videos, no breakdowns, no reactions, no new models, just my system, my stats, my execution. And that silence, it was painful at first. But within a month, my trading doubled in clarity. My decision making sharpened, and for the first time ever, I felt like I was the trader, not someone else's echo. Here is why this shift matters so much. Every strategy you watch is built on different core, different entries, different time frames, different psychological tolerances, different expectations of risk to reward and trade frequency. And when you mix those together, you don't get a better system. You get a conflict, and conflict destroys execution. You hesitate, you second guess, you override your plan mid-trade because your brain is full of what ifs, which means you don't actually test any system long enough to know if it even works. You are caught in the illusion of research, but you never collect real, clean data. And without clean data, there is no logic, only noise. So if you reach the point where you stopped watching strategy videos all day long, that's not just a preference. That's a psychological milestone. It means you no longer treat trading like a hunt. You stopped looking for the next thing. You started owning what you already have. Your confidence now comes from execution, not influence. And that shift alone, it's a sign that you are not just studying trading anymore, you are doing it. But even after cutting the noise, I still had one last trap to escape: my expectations. Because no matter how clear your system is, if your mind is chasing fantasy returns, you will always overtrade, over-risk, and burn out before your edge can even play out. Let me guess. You keep asking yourself, how much can I make this month? How long until I go full time? What if I pass this challenge in 3 days? And those questions feel motivating. But in reality, they are pressure traps. Because every time the market doesn't deliver on your dream, you panic. You push harder, you force setups, you think, I am behind, but you are not behind. You are just measuring your journey with fantasy math. Here's the harsh truth. If your trading plan is built on hope, you are gambling. If you expect to hit 80% win rate or 10-hour trades every week or consistent 20% returns every month, you are not a trader. You are a wishful thinker. And every time reality doesn't match the dream, you adjust things that didn't need fixing. You sabotage what was already working just because it didn't feel fast enough. But that's not strategy. That's emotional trading. And emotional trading always ends in the same way. I remember sitting down and running the numbers on my own system, looking at win rate over 100 trades, average risk to reward, monthly variance, longest drawdown periods, average trades per week, and suddenly I saw what the system could actually do, not what I wanted it to do. Was it exciting? No. But was it real? Yes. And for the first time, I stopped overtrading, stopped getting angry at break-even, stopped dreaming about 7 figures in 12 months. Because I finally understood what consistency really looks like. Here's what most traders forget. The market doesn't pay you for effort. It pays you for statistical edge over time. But edge doesn't play out in 5 trades or 10 or even 20. Edge is a long-term concept. It needs hundreds of samples to express itself. And every time you judge a strategy too soon, you are killing it before the math even has a chance. The more unrealistic your expectations, the more pressure you create. And the more pressure you create, the worse your execution gets. It's a loop. And the only way to break it is to let math set your expectations, not your emotions. So if you started thinking like a statistician instead of a dreamer, that's a major shift. Because you're no longer chasing outcomes. You are respecting distribution. You are no longer pushing the market, you are letting your edge breathe. And that mindset, that's the difference between the ones who burn out and the ones who scale. But even once I stopped dreaming about profits, there was still one trigger that kept pulling me off track: money. As long as I kept checking my P&L, I still traded with emotion. So the next thing I had to learn was to detach completely from outcome and finally lock in on execution only. What the equity curve would be like if it would lose, or if I could still hit my monthly goal. Even while the trade was running, my focus wasn't on execution anymore. It was on outcome. And I didn't realize it back then, but this one habit, this money focus, was silently corrupting every part of my decision making. My focus wasn't on execution anymore. It was on making money. And here's the brutal truth I had to face. The more I chased money, the more emotionally unstable I became. I would tighten stops when I felt scared. I would force entries after a loss. I would take profits early just to lock something in. I would skip setups because I couldn't afford another loss. All of that came from one core problem. I attached my self-worth to results. If I won, I felt smart. If I lost, I questioned everything. Not just the system, but myself. And as long as I was caught in that loop, no strategy, no matter how good, could save me. Because I wasn't trading the system, I was trading my fear of loss. But there was a turning point. After one really bad week where I followed all my rules perfectly but still ended red, I caught myself spiraling again. Maybe this strategy isn't enough. Maybe I should adjust risk. Maybe I should wait for more confidence next time. But this time, something clicked. I realized nothing's broken. I'm just uncomfortable. So I did something I would never done before. I stopped tracking daily, even weekly profits. And I committed to asking just one thing after every trade. Did I follow the plan? Yes or no? That single question rewired how I saw everything. Suddenly, losses didn't hurt the same way, because I wasn't seeing them as failure. I was seeing them as part of the system. Here's what I understand now and what I wish I would realize sooner. You can't control outcome. You can do everything right and still lose. You can do everything wrong and still win. So if your confidence is based on the result, you are going to be emotionally unstable forever. But if your confidence is based on execution, you become untouchable. Because execution is the only variable that's 100% within your control. And consistency isn't built from results. It's built from controlling what you can and surrounding the rest. So if you are like I was, constantly calculating profits, thinking in P&L, refreshing equity curves, tying your worth to green days, here is what finally set me free. I stopped asking how much can I make this week and start asking, did I do my job? That one shift was the start of everything changing, because it wasn't just a productivity tweak, it was an identity transformation. I wasn't gambling anymore. I wasn't trying to force a result. I was operating a system. And ironically, that's when the results finally came. But even after I let go of outcome, there was one more enemy I had to defeat: my own eyes. Because even when my mindset was right, if I kept watching the screen for hours, I always find a way to interfere. And that interference, it almost destroyed all the progress I made. Back in the day, I was always watching the charts. Refreshing, zooming, rechecking. Every candle close felt important. Every micro move made me question myself. I thought I was being irresponsible, but really, I was just anxious. It felt like if I didn't watch the trade constantly, something bad would happen. So I kept watching. But the more I watched, the more emotional I became. I was reacting to noise, trying to outthink randomness, trying to control something I couldn't control. Looking back, I wasn't just watching the chart. I was watching my self-worth rise and fall in real time. I needed to see green to feel safe. I needed to watch price behave to feel in control. But that wasn't trading. That was attachment. And attachment in trading is deadly, because it turns every pip into a personal story, every small pullback into a threat, every minor fluctuation into a crisis. And in that state, you can't make clear decisions, because you don't execute a system, you react to fear. At some point I said, enough. I built my system, backtested it, set my rules. Then I forced myself to let go. I used alerts, limit orders, and after placing the trade, I closed the charts. At first, it was terrifying. I felt like I was giving up control, like I was being lazy. But slowly, I noticed something strange. I stopped forcing trades. I wasn't overthinking anymore. I followed my plan more consistently. I had way more emotional energy left for the next trading day. I wasn't drained. I wasn't tense. I wasn't second guessing everything. And for the first time in 2 years, I started trusting myself. Here is what I realized. Watching the charts doesn't help execution. It corrupts it. Because in trading, attention equals emotional exposure. And when I'm emotionally exposed to every tick, I am more likely to interfere. Micromanaging trades doesn't come from discipline. It comes from fear. fear of losing, fear of missing, fear of not being in control. But if my edge is real, the outcome is already defined. What matters is what I do before the trade, not during it. And when I finally accepted that, my entire workflow changed. Reducing screen time wasn't about being lazy. It was about building trust. Trust in my rules, trust in the system, trust in myself to let the numbers play out. Now my average chart time is less than 5 minutes per day. Not because I am advanced, but because that's all I need. And ironically, the less I watched the market, the more consistent I became. Because the real edge wasn't found in analysis. It was found in detachment. But even with less screen time, there was one more thing I had to change. My entire mindset around risk. Because I was still trading like I needed to win every trade. Still trying to make back the last loss. Still thinking like a hunter, and that mindset kept me stuck in survival mode. When I started trading, my mindset was simple. High reward equals faster success. So why not risk 2%, 3%, even 5%? I thought I was being bold. I thought I was trusting my system. But here is what actually happened. 1 loss felt normal. 2 losses felt uncomfortable. 3 losses in a row, panic. I would reduce position size, hesitate on the next trade, second guess everything. And when a win finally came, it barely made a difference. My psychology couldn't handle the swings, and my account couldn't either. I was trading like I had something to prove, like I was in a rush to make it big. But that urgency was destroying my ability to execute. Because let's be honest, most traders don't blow up from strategy flows. They blow up from emotional pressure. And the number one source of that pressure? Risking too much. If you size big, every trade feels like a test. If you lose, it hurts. If you win, you are extremely happy. That kind of trading is about surviving. And you can't build consistency when your nervous system is hijacked. What I didn't realize back then was the goal is not to win fast. The goal is to survive long enough for the edge to play out. When I finally got funded, my entire mindset flipped. Suddenly, I wasn't trading with 2K. I was trading with 100K plus. And I felt it. The pressure of not screwing this up, the fear of losing what I just earned, the temptation to make it count. And I realized something. The more capital I had, the less risk I could take psychologically. So I cut my risk per trade. Not because I lost faith in my system, but because I gained clarity on my objective. Stay in the game, let the law of large numbers work, don't self-sabotage. Let's break it down logically. Your edge only reveals itself over 50-100 trades. That's just how probabilities work. But if you size too aggressively, a few losses are enough to knock you out emotionally or financially before the edge even has a chance. Think about it. If your edge plays out over 100 trades, but your mindset collapses after 5, you will never get to consistency. Risking less per trade isn't weakness, it's insurance. It's how you protect the one thing that actually creates results: execution. So here is what finally made me stable. I stopped trying to win big, and I started trying to stay sane. I accepted that I don't need to prove anything to the market. I just need to survive. Because long-term profit isn't about being aggressive. It's about being consistent long enough for your edge to do its job. That mindset, defensive trading, is what finally gave me peace. And ironically, it's also what finally gave me profit. But even after I reduced my risk and stopped trying to win hard, there was still one part of me that was secretly holding me back. The part that wanted to squeeze out every dollar from every setup. And until I killed that too, I wasn't truly free. A few years ago, every trade felt like a one-time opportunity. If I didn't hold it longer, if I didn't let the risk reward stretch just a bit more, if I didn't enter one more setup that looked right, I felt like I was missing profit. I was obsessed with catching the perfect exit, the maximum reward, the full move. And when I didn't, I felt like I failed, even if I won. But that mindset, that need to milk the trade, wasn't helping me to grow. It was feeding my ego and slowly draining my account. Because here is the brutal truth. The more obsessed you are with squeezing every dollar, the more likely you are to lose money. You hold winners too long. You re-enter setups that already played out. You force trades that don't fit the plan. Why? Because you are not focused on capital growth. You are focused on being right. And that need to extract every drop usually ends with you giving it all back. This is what most traders never see. Real growth doesn't come from squeezing more from each trade. It comes from compounding clean execution over time. I had a period where I was doing okay. My strategy worked, I had decent risk management, but my growth was flat and worse, inconsistent. Why? Because every time I had a decent run, I would try to optimize it by holding trades longer or taking one more setup or letting the runner play out. And guess what happened? The equity curve, my emotions spiked, and I started revenge trading. Until one day I looked at the data and saw a pattern. Every time I tried to squeeze more, I made less. So I flipped the game. Instead of squeezing, I started stacking. Small wins, clean execution, stable progress. And that's when my account and my confidence finally grew. Think about it. Your account grows by maintaining edge, avoiding unnecessary risk, protecting capital, repeating what works. But if you keep chasing maximum profit, you are making high variance decisions. And high variance equals emotional instability. That's not how you scale capital. That's how you burn out. Traders who actually grow sustainably don't chase perfect trades. They chase perfect processes. And they trust that profit will follow. So what finally made me consistent? I stopped asking, how can I get more out of this trade? And start asking, how can I grow this capital over the next 6 to 12 months? That question changed my entire trading behavior. I started thinking like a fund manager, not a gambler. And ironically, that's when I actually started making real money. Not flashy spikes, but stable, scalable growth. But even after I stopped chasing big wins, there was still one thing keeping me inconsistent: rule flexibility. Because as long as my system was still open to interpretation, I could always find a reason to justify trades. I used to say I follow strict rules, but deep down there was always a way out. I would take a setup that was 80% clean and say, close enough. I would skip a trade that did fit the rules and justify it with didn't feel right. And every time something didn't work out, I would quietly make another adjustment. Add one more confirmation, tighten the stop just slightly, one only take it during a certain times of day or only when I was feeling focused enough. I was constantly changing the plan in real time based on nothing but my feelings. And the worst part, I didn't even realize I was doing it because I believed I'm just trying to improve. But that belief was the biggest lie I ever told myself. The truth was I was addicted to control. I didn't want to be the executor of a system. I wanted to be the one who decides what trades to take. Because if I give full control to the system and it fails, that hurts. That would mean I'm not special, that I'm not the smart one who can feel the market. And my ego didn't want to accept that. So I kept tweaking, kept adjusting, thinking I could outsmart the edge with intuition. And that mindset is the silent killer of every promising trader. So here is what I did. I forced myself to define every rule. Not in vague terms, not in intuition, not in sometimes this, sometimes that. I made it binary. Is it the entry there? Yes or no. Is the setup clean? Yes or no. Is the risk aligned? Yes or no. And if even one answer was no, I skipped the trade. Even if it looked perfect. Even if I felt tempted. At first, it was painful. I felt like I was giving up control. But over time, it became the most powerful freedom I have ever experienced. Because now, I didn't have to think, I didn't have to doubt, I didn't have to decide. I just followed what was written. Because here's the thing, if your system is 95% fixed, it's not fixed. That leftover 5% is where all your worst habits live. That's where overtrading sneaks in, where maybe this one is different lives, where you justify trades that makes no sense. And that 5%, it only shows up when the pressure is on, after a losing streak, when you want to recover losses, when you are tired, distracted, or in doubt. And it always leads to breakdown. But when you lock your rules 110%, you remove that variable. You build a wall between your emotions and your execution. And that's when real consistency becomes possible. So if you are still tweaking mid-trade, still telling yourself this one is a special case, still letting how you feel decide whether or not take a setup, I promise you, that's the reason you are not consistent yet. Because real consistency doesn't come from being clever. It comes from surrender, from committing to a set of rules so strict that your opinion doesn't even matter anymore. That's how I became consistent. Not by learning more, but by removing myself from the equation. And once I did that, I had to confront one final truth. It's not me who makes the money. It's not my intuition. It's not my mindset. It's the system. If you are like how I used to be, you believe you are what makes the trade work. You think if I feel confident, I will know when to enter. If I'm in the zone, I will manage it perfectly. But that kind of thinking is dangerous, because now your performance depends on how you feel. And that's the fastest way to destroy consistency, because your emotions change. Your energy shifts, your focus fades when pressure hits. So when the system loses, you blame yourself. When the system wins, you think you are the reason. And that identity trap keeps you stuck in a loop that never ends. But here is the brutal truth I had to accept. I am not the edge. I am not the genius. And I'm not special. The edge is in the system. It's in the data, in the structure, in the probability. And once I accepted that, I didn't need to feel good to trade well. I didn't need to be motivated or inspired, perfectly focused. I just needed to show up and execute what was already defined. That mindset killed my ego and replaced it with peace. There was a day I took a trade when I felt completely off, tired, distracted, not in flow at all. But the setup was clean, the rules were met, so I took it. And guess what? It won. And that moment hit me hard, because it proved once and for all it's not about how I feel. It's about following a system that already has edge built in. That trade had nothing to do with me, and I was finally okay with that. Think about it. If your system has statistical edge, it works regardless of how you feel. Your mindset doesn't change the risk reward. Your emotions don't shift the win rate. Your confidence doesn't increase probability. Edge is in the numbers. And when you act like the edge is you, you create instability. You build self-worth on randomness. You overmanage. You interfere. But when you accept the edge is in the system, you free yourself from that burden. Now you can focus on the one thing that is in your control: execution. So if you are still trying to feel your way through trading, if you are still trying to get in the zone, if you still think winning means you are doing well, you are still making it about you. And that was my problem too. But the moment I stepped back and accepted that my system is the edge, not my thoughts or mood or my genius, that's when consistency became possible. Because now I had one job: execute. Nothing more and nothing less. So that's how I became consistent, therefore profitable. Not by working harder, not by grinding through YouTube videos, not by mastering my mindset or finding a crazy profitable strategy, but by letting go of control, by trusting the numbers, by surrendering to structure, and by finally becoming not the hero of the system, but the executor of it. But you can be a perfect executor and you can be consistent. If your strategy is not profitable in the first place, you will keep losing money, because it's not just about how you trade, it's about what you are trading. So before you waste months and thousands of dollars trying to optimize something that can't even win, watch this next video. I will show you how to test if your strategy is actually profitable on real life markets.